All right. Good morning, everybody. That's right. My name's Joe. I'm one of the pastors here at Crossroads, and love to be with you. I got to work with a great production team up there, and church business council, and the office staff, and love to be a part of Sunday mornings with you guys here or at the Ogden campus on 2nd Street. And so we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're continuing in our series, The 12. The 12, if you're not sure, you're like Super Bowl 12, or you're like, I just didn't do a lot of Roman numeral study in school. So this refers to Jesus' friends, the 12 disciples. And so what does it look like to be a disciple? How is that different maybe from being a Christian? Because 85% of people in the U.S. say, hey, I'm a Christian, when they're asked, but less than about 0.25% of people actually do the things that disciples do, the things that Jesus talked to his friends at. So there's a big gap between what people think following Jesus looks like and actually doing the things that Jesus talked to his friends about. So we've been continuing this series. It stretches me every week. And I was like, yeah, God, I got you there. Where he wants to make me more like him. And he wants to help me begin to do the things that he's called me to do and that he's called you to do. And part of that means making some adjustments. And so in this series, we've been talking about the difference between what Christians do and what disciples do, and looking to say yes to Jesus in that process. So we've been taking the Bible and saying, this is what Jesus said to his friends. This is what he said to the 12. This is how he encouraged them. This is how he showed them. This is what he did for his very best friends, and it's written down so that we can learn to do the same. So this series, it's designed to help us become what we're made to be. You see, we're actually not made to be Christians. We're actually made to be disciples. We're made to be people who follow and walk in the footsteps of Jesus and do the things that he did, which is very different than just being somebody who says, I love God. I don't do anything of the things of God, but I love him. Or I know who he is. I know about him. That is very different than being a disciple. So we've actually been made to do the things of God, and that looks a little different than sometimes what we think. So today we're going to talk about something that is needed in all of our lives. Every single one of us, you'll go, that fits me. And then finding where the right balance of that is really part of what we're going to talk about today, because it's often very misunderstood and misapplied in our lives. And that is rest. That is rest. We see rest talked about in the Bible really from the very beginning. And God defines it as called like a Sabbath rest, something to specifically do in rest. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And we have that in our culture, and sometimes it goes to both extremes. And we'll see some in the Bible where it's so legalistic and it's so ritualistic and it's so prescribed and it's so in a box that it really limits the ability to love God and love people. But then the other side of that is we don't understand how to rest properly, the way that God leads us to and inspires us to connect with him, that we are never rested. Or when we do rest, it's so about us and so about the things that we want, the things that we need, that we don't actually connect with God, who is the source of rest, and we never feel refreshed. So because of that, we get into this place feeling like we're always going. Sometimes it's because we allow our schedules to be so filled, or that we just are so tired because we're never fully, properly rested, that we say no to good things, the things that God would have us do. The things that God has literally planned from the beginning of creation for just us to step into, to do at that special moment. We go, I don't have time for that. Or I'm so tired, I would love to do that, but I can't do that. And that's why a disciple needs to know the difference and how to find proper rest and how to apply it to their life so that they can love God and love people and do it in balance. So you're like, so exciting. Let's all take a vacation and talk about this. Well, maybe. So before I go too deep, we're going to be reading from the Bible a lot today. One of a great reference that I'm going to reference a couple times is a book called Subversive Sabbath by A.J. Svoboda. He's a Foursquare pastor and a great author, loves Jesus deeply, and talks about the Sabbath in there. And it's inspired our pastors who got to hear him at retreat. And it's actually captivating quite a few, especially ministers, because when do they take time off? A lot of times they get the weekends, and that's where a lot of the church stuff happens because people are working during the week. But during the week, they're doing the things that helps get ready for the weekend and ministering and loving people. And when do you stop? When do you actually take a Sabbath? And so it doesn't matter where you're at in your walk with Jesus, everybody needs a rest. And so it spoke just as deeply to people who are giving their whole lives to God, trying to be disciples, as it does to somebody who may just be getting to know him. So I'm going to literally steal from him regularly. And so instead of saying his name every time, there's several things in here that I plucked right out of his book because it's pretty impactful and powerful. So I'm just giving him credit now in a blanket way so that I don't have to reference him multiple times. But in a world of doing, going, producing, we often have no use for the gift that invites us to stop and rest. But it's what God's very first gift to mankind was: rest. If you look at the creation account, when God created everything, at least the way the Bible describes it, you can find it in the first book, in the first chapter, in Genesis. It starts right there. Something that's been passed down for thousands of years. You'll see how God starts and how he puts rest right into the fabric of humanity. So in the beginning, there was nothing. It says everything was formless. There was nothing, but the Spirit of God hovered. And it says on the first day, God created the heavens and the earth. Light. So in light, because he made day and night. Love it. Let's start with something, right? Let's get the canvas out. We got to have a day. We got to have night, the heavens and the earth. It's the second day he makes the sky, the barrier between the sea, between moisture, between water and all those things. He's like, we got to start creating like the ozone. We got to create the fabric of how do things exist, oxygen, all the things that go in that. The third day, let's create land. So we need to separate the seas from actual places of ground, land. And he makes plants start to grow right on the land. Things are going good so far. In fact, every day he said it's good. The fourth day, he makes the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the things that bear light, which is really cool. So the first day he made light, but not till the fourth day did he make the things that hold light. So from day 1 through day 4, he was being the light. In fact, you can look in John, it says Jesus is the light of the world. And so who was shining, who was lighting things up? It was God. And in fact, he takes his light and he goes, I'm going to put it in the sun, and I'm going to put it in the moon, and I'm going to put it in the stars. They'll all hold my light. But not until the fourth day was there light, even though the first day he made light already. The things that hold light, bear light, he didn't create till the fourth day, which is cool because I'm regularly going like, I got this God thing figured out. He's like, no, you don't. The deeper you dig, the more you go, he loves me so much. I don't think I could ever even fully understand it. Because if he's that intentional about creating light, and if he's that intentional about the creation of the earth, like how intentional is he about my life and how much he cares for me and for you? On day 5, he creates the sea creatures and the birds. So if you love eating fish, day 5 is your day. I think chickens fall into the bird category, maybe. So if you like some chicken, El Pollo Loco, that is day 5. And it's a good day. In fact, every day through now has been a good day. At the end of the day, God says, and this is good. So day 6, God creates all the creatures inhabiting the land, like cheetahs, pumas, cats. He makes Adam. He makes the first man. And he says, this is not good. I think it's because of cats, because my cat hates me. I'm a great guy. I feed that cat all the time. I don't like the cat, but I feed that cat. And he hisses at me every day. And I was like, that is why God said it is not good, because of cats. But that's not actually what the Bible says. It's because that man was alone. And he says it's not good for man to be alone. And so he makes him a helpmate. He takes right from his side and he says, I'm going to make you woman. We'll name her Eve. And now he says, this is good. So Adam and Eve, starting on their very first moment, God's like, hey, the sun is about to set right now. Here's what your jobs are. You guys are supposed to have dominion over all the land, sea, creatures, everything that there is. Name them, do this stuff. He's like, here's your job description. Welcome to planet Earth. And he goes, but before you do that, we're getting to day 7. He goes, we're going to rest. We're going to start with rest. You and I are going to connect. We're going to get to know each other. I'm going to refresh you, and then you're going to work. This is the pattern of your life that I want you to do. You see, we think we're like God and that we should work 6 days and then rest. But in fact, he says you should start with rest and then work. Sometimes our life gets so out of order, we forget that we're more like Adam and Eve than we are like God. And we try to work, and get to the place where maybe we can fit in rest. He says, don't start like that. Start with rest, real rest, where you connect with me and where we have communion together, where you get to know me and where I get to know you in a way that you become so refreshed in a place that you cannot be filled any other place. Then work out of that overflow. Once I've filled you up, then pour it out. That's how you love God and love people. You have something to give. Instead of, I'm running on empty, I got to get refilled. One of the things I love about God, AJ says, he's the God who created the weekend. Amen. Because we love the weekend, right? Everybody loves a break. They actually like rest. The absence of the need to run around and do things. But we just so often get rest wrong and how God meant it. But from the very beginning, he started with Adam and Eve. And then as God has his own people, he says he picks Abram and his family and his descendants. And then those descendants, they get stuck in Egypt. And he says, I'm going to pull you out. I'm going to rescue you. You know what? I've needed rescuing. And God rescues me. And he takes them to a place and he goes, now I'm going to give you some rules so that you guys learn how to live and so that you survive because I love you. So he gives them some guidelines. In fact, he calls them commandments. He says, here's 10, the top 10. Like, get to know these things. They will help save your life. You know, before he talked about murder, before he talked about adultery, before even after the 10 commandments, he talked into some other ones, lying and incest and rape, jealousy, child sacrifice. Before he gets into this whole list of these, he named the Sabbath. He says, you need rest. It's in the top 10. But we look at the Sabbath so often as one of the suggested things, not one of the commands. Like it's 9 commands and 1 suggestion. Like if you can fit this into your schedule, that would be good. Imagine if it was different. You just take any other one of those. Like, hey, do all these other things. And then, hey, if you can get away with not murdering somebody, that's great. Just fit it in your schedule if you can do that. Imagine if it's like, hey, try to do all your other stuff, but then if you can just live life without lying, that'd be great today. You're just walking around lying up a storm. You're like, I just didn't have time. But when we look at how he says to rest, we go like, I'll try to fit it in if I can. But in fact, he says it's actually towards the top of the 10 commandments because most of the don't do's are on the bottom half. So he says, put God first and have no idols, no things that you make up that you start worshiping and have a Sabbath and keep it holy. Keep it set apart, something where you and I connect. And when he says that Sabbath, all those other things, he's like, if you're connected with me and there's no other gods and you're not worshiping something you made, he goes, guess what? It's going to be much easier to not lie and steal and cheat and covet and murder, all these things that are listed on the bottom half. Yeah, we take it as a suggestion, like, well, but he started our lives that way. Adam and Eve goes, start with rest, and then work out of that. You're like, I'm in. How do I do this? It was kind of a big deal to him. Sometimes our life has us instead of us having our life. Our computers and our phones, they're always buzzing and they're always beeping. Somebody's always asking for more. Jesus and his friends, they learned how to say no because they were doing what God was calling them to do, and that included rest. They were living lives in balance instead of running around all the time out of control. Sometimes that means one less scheduled this and one less scheduled that, but it creates space and creates time for God. Many times we turn his vision of resting into something that is so self-focused, self-entertaining, self-pleasing, and individualistic that we never get recharged and we never get refueled because it's just about us. It's not actually about us connecting with God in a way that's meaningful. Because we have this emptiness inside of us that goes, I just need to like be recharged. I just need rest. But have you ever been in the place where you're resting and you just aren't rested? You just can't get enough. It's like an empty hole. Like there's a bucket filled with water and there's a hole in it and it just keeps leaking out as fast as you pour it into it. And when we do rest the wrong way, that's what happens. You cannot binge enough shows to get you to the place where you're feeling good enough. You cannot do enough golf or ski or whatever it is to finally feel good enough. Sometimes we come back from rest more tired than when we started it because we haven't put him at the center of it. Because it's just about us. Here's a funny little clip from some comedians on a show quite a few years ago who talk about how it's easy to get backwards on how it's about you and yourself. So.
Donatella, T-Mobile. 3 words for you. Treat yourself. Treat yourself in 2011. Once a year, Donna and I spend a day treating ourselves. What do we treat ourselves to?
Clothes,
Treat yourself.
fragrances,
Treat yourself.
massages,
Treat yourself.
mimosas,
Treat yourself.
fine leather goods.
Treat yourself.
It's the best day of the year.
The best day of the year.
How many of you are familiar with treat yourself? You're like, you know what? I've worked so hard. I've been doing I just need to treat myself. I need to take care of me. Sometimes in that pendulum of resting, we get it out of control, though. It's all about us. It's all about the things we want, all about the things we need, all about making ourselves feel better. But I'll tell you that they always come up short because you cannot have enough fine leather goods or whatever, all the stuff they listed to actually feel the rest that God has for us deep in that place that we need. Now, I'm not saying let's live lives that are not fun and anytime you have a break, sit down and just pray all day. But there's a difference between God being at the center of your day, at the center of your time, at the center of your life, and even enjoying the things that you enjoy, but God is invited to be alone. Versus, I have no time for him, no time for stuff. Sometimes you need to take a break from your break. You need to take a Sabbath from the breaks you've been taking because we get into treating ourselves so good that we forgot that God should be invited to be alone. We need to take a break from that stuff. We need to actually also get back into work. Sometimes we're like, I'm so exhausted. I've just taken a break from all the good things that God's called me to do. Because there's no space for that. Because if it's not treat yourself time, and then it's doing all these other things for all these other people, but the space for where God is in our lives to do the things that God has for us, I just don't have time for that. Sometimes we need to take a break from some of the different things on our schedule and make room for God. Because he actually says it's really important, top 10 important. Sometimes we take a Sabbath from praying and just go like, I'm so tired, I just don't have any time. Or I'm so tired, I don't have time to talk to God. Try that with your spouse if you're married. They start talking to you and go, you know what, I'm just too tired for that right now. Check in with me Thursday. Maybe I'll have time for you then. How long does that last? But God says, I want to know you and I want to help you. Like, why go till Thursday without me? Like, I want to help you and I want to walk in your every moment because you're definitely going to need me before Thursday. You will definitely need me and I want to be there, but I don't kick your door down. I'll knock and you choose to open it. It's our job to invite him into our life and to keep him at the center of our life. That even includes rest. Is he at the center of my rest, or is my rest about treat yourself? Because you have worked so hard, Joe. You've done so good, Joe. Look at all the things you've done. Now treat yourself. I've finished days of treating yourself, and I've been more tired than when I started. And I go, man, I really just need I need a real rest. And I don't know why I just can't get back to like that right bar. Sometimes because I didn't start with him. Sometimes we just got to take that break from our breaks and bring it back to the right place. Like when it is time to rest, is he there and in the center? Are we involving him in our lives like a disciple would or like a Christian does who says, I'll see you on Sundays, some of them, when it works for me. If the snow's not good or if the lake's not open today. Whatever it is, it's like, well, we'll see where we can fit you in. And that's what the difference between a disciple is. Somebody who says, I choose to live with him at the center of my life so that I can do the things that he's done, so that it's about loving God and loving people, not just loving God and loving myself. Jesus has one of these moments where some of the people who would be considered like Christians today, these were people who knew God at some level. They were called Pharisees. They were hyper-Christians. This is their interaction. It's in Matthew chapter 12. So if you have your Bibles, you can do it. You can look on all the screens everywhere. You can find a place to find this, or you can look on the phone, on our app even. So Matthew chapter 12, it says, at the time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them, just like we all do, right? And when the Pharisees, when the Christian guys of the day saw this, they said, look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful. You're not supposed to work today. You don't feed yourself like this. It's supposed to be prepared yesterday so you don't have to work. What they're doing is wrong. And he answered, he's like, all right, guys. Haven't you read when David, like you guys all love David, he was like the king. You guys follow after him. Haven't you read when David and his companions were hungry? It says they entered the house of God, the temple, the thing y'all worship more than God sometimes. They entered the temple and they ate the consecrated bread. They ate the stuff that was offered to God and only the priests could eat. They're like, they broke into the church and they're like, I'm so hungry. Please don't do that. And he said, he goes, haven't you read like in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple, he goes, don't you know that your pastors work on Sundays? Basically is what he's saying. He goes, don't you know that the priests who were working in the temple, they break that law? Like they're doing work on Sundays. He goes, but is that unlawful? Like, is that against the law? He goes, no. He goes, there's something much greater than your temple here. And if you don't know what these words mean, he goes, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. He goes, it's not all about the rules. It's about the heartbeat of connecting with God. He goes, then you wouldn't have condemned these innocents. He goes, for the Son of Man, he was talking about himself. He goes, he's the Lord of the Sabbath. What he's saying is like, hey guys, when it comes to taking rest, he goes, I'm over all of that. I know how it works. The cool thing is the Bible also says he's the Lord of the harvest. That means work. That God is over all our work and our rest. And that's not like work, rest. They're equally valuable and equally important. And sometimes we don't live in a place or in a culture that says that rest is important because it's all about my production. It's all about my work. It's all about the things I do. But he says, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. Rest is important. It's been from the very beginning. It's in the top 10s. Like I'm talking about it now. But these guys are in their box going like, if it's not done this way, this how, this time, this day, and you don't do it exactly the way that we thought or that we know, then it doesn't count, and then in fact, you're wrong. God's rest may be different for you than somebody else. And it's up to us to listen to God specifically for us in our life and connect with him in a way that we're recharged, that we're refreshed. I don't have an expectation and a plan drawn out for your life. He does. Do what he said. That may look different than your neighbor. Don't compare your life to your neighbor. Compare your life to what did God say that I should do? Do that. Do that. In verse 9, they're going on from that place. They went into the synagogue. They went into the place where they had church. And a man with a shriveled hand was there. And looking to bring charges against Jesus, these Pharisees, these Christians who go like, I don't like how you break our rules. They wanted to get him and they wanted to trap him. So they said, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Is it lawful to do good things? The things that God would have us do on a Sabbath? Don't we need rest? And he said, hey, come on, guys. We live in an agrarian society. He goes, a lot of you know shepherds. He goes, if you had a sheep and it fell down into this ditch, would you just leave it? Would you just walk away from it? He goes, or would you reach down and pull it out? Working, breaking the Sabbath. Would you do that? Do you care more about your possessions than the law? Because I think you do. Do you bend the rules when it works for you, but not for other people? You want to hold them to this standard because they're not doing it the way that you think they should do it. But hey, if it's your property and you're going to lose your property, well then we can pause the Sabbath. It'll be okay. Fix our stuff, and then we can go back to our Sabbath, right? So Jesus is helping him going like, okay, this is how much you care for your sheep. Listen to this. He goes, how much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Sorry if you're a sheep lover. He did said a little thing there. He goes, God cares so much about you. Please tell me you would not spare your sheep, but not this man. Please tell me you would not have mercy for your sheep, but no mercy for this man. He goes, that Sabbath is not intended to block you out from doing the things of God. In fact, you're supposed to be rested to know when to move in and move out of that. And Jesus shows them. He goes, yeah, guys, this is a problem. So then he says to the man, stretch out your hand. The man whose hand has always been shriveled. Stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. So these Pharisees immediately go, we were wrong. We had it this way, now we see. They didn't write that down though. It said it, instead, the Pharisees plotted on how they would kill Jesus because he broke their rules. Because he told them that there's a different way to do things than the way that you think that they should do them. Hold on, I've got to pass a level real quick right here. Just kidding. I'm teasing. That's how we can get so stuck. That's how we can get so stuck with our phones. I wanted to read you because I also have the Bible on my app. I use the Bible app. And I was actually doing my devotions yesterday, and Luke chapter 6 came up. And in Luke chapter 6, which is the same story that we find in Matthew, it says this. In verse 8, it says Jesus, so it's not on the screens because it's on my screen. Jesus said this moment where they just moved from talking about you're eating grain off of this and you shouldn't be doing this. It says, so Jesus is with them in the synagogue and he goes, he knew their thoughts. He knew that they were just out to get him. So this is so cool because Jesus is so great. It says he knew their thoughts. So he said to the man with a deformed hand, he goes, come here. Come stand in front of everybody. So the man came forward and he said to his critics, I got a question for you. Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save life or destroy it? It says he looked around them one by one. Like, I'm sure he paused because he was just that way. He looked at us individually and he goes like, hey, you think about this. Like, which one is it? So then he says to the man, hold out your hand. Stretch it out. So he holds out his hand and it was restored. At this, the enemies of Jesus began to rage. God cares more about us than we can ever imagine. He shared that man's story in front of them to help them go like, rest is so important, but you're making it a religion. You're worshiping a day I've never made for you to worship. You're supposed to worship God. You're not supposed to make this into a ritual as much as you're supposed to make a relationship with me that is real and living and active. So that when you're walking with me and you see that thing that I'm calling you to do, you stop and go, yeah, it's okay to pause the Sabbath. It's okay to pause from my break. Instead of living in the treat yourself world, go like, this one needs rescuing. And being filled with God because we've been connected with him, we have something to give. In Mark chapter 6, there's a cool story how Jesus was working with his 12. One of the things that's so cool about it is it was not long into the ministry of Jesus that Jesus said, you know what, guys? You've seen me do some stuff. You've seen me love some people. He goes, now you're going to do it. Could you imagine them going like, who, me? You must mean those other people, right? He says, no, you. And I'm going to send you so you're not by yourself. So everybody buddy up. Let's get a buddy system. Get a buddy and let's go. And you guys are going to do the things that I did. So they've got to be like shaken. He goes, don't worry. I'll be with you. Not literally with all of them because they were going to different places, but he's like, I'm with you. Don't worry. So he sends them out. You'd be surprised at what happens. It says, so they went out and proclaimed that people should repent, that they should turn from the ways that they had been headed and run to God. That's what that means. It says, and they're kind of reporting back to Jesus what happened. It says, and they cast out many demons and anointed people with oil who were sick, and God healed them. They did the things of God. They were really disciples. You know what it also says, if you keep reading there, it says, they came back and it's like, we were so busy we didn't even have time to eat. We've been so busy doing the good things, we didn't even have time. And he goes, okay, we need to rest. You guys need to go over here and you need to just be quiet and eat and you need to settle down for a minute. Because sometimes we can also get so caught up in doing good things that we forget that God still has rest in our plans. That we are called, even in doing the good things of God, to find a right balance. Because work soon leads to all work, no rest. And Jesus modeled it to him right from the beginning. He was like, hey, stop. That's good, guys, great. Now go rest, go eat. Because I'm not calling you to run a sprint, but a marathon. Like we've got a lot of these days ahead of us, and you need to find rest, and you need to connect with God. And Jesus it says he regularly went out to a place by himself, and he found rest. Sabbath means to rest. But a lot of times we go, I just don't have time for that. I don't have time to rest. I'm too busy doing good things. We've been taking a break sometimes too from doing good things because we just don't have time. We're so busy. Or we're taking all the wrong kinds of rest. Stuff that's all about me, all about myself, and not actually about connecting with God, who's the creator of rest, who's the Lord of the Sabbath. Today I pray that you hear from him personally, because somebody else's plan for your life isn't God's plan for your life. You're specific and you're special. He's created you for a purpose, and he has a plan for your life, and it's good. And that plan includes connecting with him and resting in him and going deeper in him. Sometimes that means you need to take a break from that break. Maybe you've been taking a break from reading the Bible. You're like, I just don't have time. I'm telling you, if my wife wrote me a love letter, and sometimes it feels like it's this many pages, if she asked me, hey, have you read that? And I was like, I don't have time right now, but I'm going to get to it probably next week. Maybe they'll be going over it on Sunday. I'm not sure. How do you think she would feel? Where do you think I'd be sleeping? You're like, on the curb? Maybe. Yet God has written us a love letter that helps us know him, helps us understand how he loves us and how he's created us. And sometimes we've been taking a break from that because we've got so many other busy things in our life that we haven't set time apart to keep it holy for God. So I don't have a prescription for you on how to do your Sabbath and how to be perfect in connecting with God, but I can tell you who does. God. Maybe it includes worshiping him more. Maybe it includes reading the word more. Maybe it includes praying more. Maybe it includes serving more. It could be a lot of different things. But it doesn't just mean more in your life. It also means less. Less noise. Less stuff in your schedule. And time that's dedicated and set apart to him. And when we do that, we will be filled and we will be overflowing because God has been speaking into our life and we've been connecting in such a way that we'll have something to give. And as those moments in our life pop up where there's needs around us, God will say, go do that. And instead of going like, I don't have time. I've got 5 other things coming up, or I've got this other thing, or hey, it's my rest time. He'll go, do it. Come on. You can do it. We've been together so that you can do this. Can I pray for you this morning? God, thank you for your deep love. That your love is not based on how much we do, but that you desperately just love us as a father to his children. That your love does not waver based on our performance. You just care about us. You care about us so much, you go, hey, working your whole life and not resting is not good for you. You'll actually find yourself closer to death by just working yourself out. You need to find the right space to rest. And maybe you're on the other end of the pendulum and you go, I've been resting and trying all these things to fill this recharge and rest, and it's not been working. And God says, you need to rest in me. And there may be some here today who say, I've never rested in God. I haven't even really known God. Maybe today is your day to start a relationship with him and invite him into your life, whether you're watching online or you're here. Say, I need him. I've been trying life on my own. I've been running like a hamster on a wheel, getting nowhere. I'd love for you to pray with somebody on our team, connect with somebody on our team, our staff, and say, I want to invite Jesus to move in my life. I want to open my doors of my heart as he knocks on them and invite him in. And for some of you, it may be that God has been reaching out to you, or he's been speaking to you in our service about finding the right type of rest, or taking a break from the break you've been taking really from him. And he's going to invite you in your own way to do rest right, so that you can do the work of God. So that you can say yes to him in the moments that he calls you to love people as you love him. God, would you speak to our hearts? Speak to my heart. Speak to us, God. We are all built a little uniquely. I know at least people say I'm unique. I know that we're all special in that way, God. That you know the specific number of hairs on every one of our heads, or the lack thereof. You love us and know us, and we're not just like the next person. So it may come that our rest and how you move in us and how you work in us is different than the rest. But God, help us to say yes to whatever your plan for my life, for our lives is. And to not settle for what everybody else is doing, but to say, I've got to live the way that works best for me, the way that God has wired me, the way that God is directing me now. And it's not all about myself, but it's about loving God, and it's about loving people. And that includes resting properly, so that I'm ready to give, and give generously as God gives me opportunity to. If that's healing, and if that's prayer, if that's encouraging somebody, whatever he may do, whatever that may look like, we say yes to you, God. Give us those opportunities. Open our eyes to see the wonderful things that you have for us to do this week as we choose to rest in you as well. God, we thank you for your great love and how it does not end for us. I pray that this week that we would choose to have an opportunity multiple times to say we rest in you, and that we would connect with you in a way that would help us to be filled so that we might be able to do the things of God and not be on empty so often, but instead to be full of you and your Spirit, ready to give and ready to say yes to whatever it is you have for us. Thank you for all that you do in us and that you're doing through us. We love you and thank you that you loved us first. In Jesus' name, amen.